Hello, I'm Gemma and welcome back to my BookTube channel. Today I will be discussing all 3 books that I read this year before I started my BookTube channel. So I have been jotting down all the books that I've read this year, the author and the star rating. This is I've only recently started this as like a guide to help me through my reading. So it tells me every single book I've read in 2021, being this year. And then what else? It tells me I've put here what I want to read. So I've got my little September TBR, which I will link that video down below. And then I have quotes here that I want to jot down. I haven't actually jotted any down yet because the majority of them I just highlight in my Kindle. And then I've got book notes. And here I've got all book notes from Cora Riley's books, which I love. I love all her books. Also, I use the Goodreads app on my phone. It's not like being in Australia, it's not like a great time reference, so this is why I use this. But this also tells me like the books and their synopsis, that's the word. Let's get into all 103 books that I read before I started my YouTube channel. I probably will, which I'm going to kill myself in editing this video, but I'm going to pop up every single book cover. My hand is very pink, which is weird. Excuse my shininess of my face. I've just come back from work today and I thought I might as well film a video this afternoon before I take all this off. So yeah. Okay, first book I read at the beginning of this year, which I read in the 1st of January, and I finished that on the 2nd of January, and that is P.S. I Still Love You. To All the Boys I Loved Before Book 2 by Jenny Han. I gave that 3 stars. So it wasn't like a great book, but I never really thought those books were super great anyway. Given that that's book 2, I'm probably not going to give you guys much synopsis of any of these, but To All the Boys I Loved Before series, there's actually 3 series movies on Netflix that you can go watch, or you can read the books. I watched the first 2 movies and then read all 3 books, because the second book I read in this year was Always and Forever Lara Jean, which I also gave 3 stars. But I read all 3 books before the 3rd movie came out. The 3rd book I read this year is The Nude Nutritionist by Lydia Cohen, I think. It's a sort of recipe type book, so I didn't rate it. Next book I read on the 6th to the 8th of January was Heartless by Marissa Meyer, which was this book. That's very shiny. But yeah, I read this book at the beginning of this year. I gave that 2 stars. I didn't like it at all. The next book I read this year was Sweet Filthy Boy by Christina Lauren. This wasn't too bad. I gave this one 4 stars. And this sort of started my journey, well, not started, but continued my journey into romance. Next book I read was actually a DNF, and it was, don't hate me, was Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I did actually have the physical copy, but I've given that away because when you DNF a book and you don't like it, I can't tell you if I didn't really like the story, which it's a YA, so that sort of put me off YA sort of. But It was a nice story, but it was just her writing. I wasn't connecting to the writing. So yeah, for DNFs I usually just give like 1 star on Goodreads. Because I didn't really DNF it, I did actually like finish it, but I skipped a lot of the book. Next book I read at the middle to end of January was Lovely War by Julie Berry. And this I gave 4 stars. This is also a love story. It's like a love story in the wartime, and it's narrated by the gods, like the Greek gods. And it's not bad. I'm fully in love with the narration style or the writing, but it was a great story and I loved it anyway. Next book I read was 6 of Crows, and I read this at the end of January. This I gave 3 stars. After reading this, I realized I'm not super into fantasy. I love the Shadowhunter books, but something like this, not completely in love with, but I do have both the books in physical copy, and I did have them before I read them. I've actually had them for years. So I actually did read both of these books at the beginning of this year. This one, the end of January, and this one at the beginning of February. But in between those 2 books, and both of them I gave 3 stars too. In between those books, I read The Nightingale, which is here, and I'm not going to get that out, but I'm just going to show you the cover. That I gave 5 stars. That was amazing. I loved that book. It was like another romance story, and it was actually 2 romance stories of 2 sisters set in wartime. This one was set in World War II, I think, and whereas Lovely War was set in World War I. And I think I'm more into the World War II than I am World War I, but that's... Okay, the next book I read was The Tea Dragon Society, which is like a comic book. Really cute. I gave that 4 stars. Next book I read was a Shadowhunter book, and it was this one here, Ghost of the Shadowhunter Market. And this is like a bind-up of like novellas and stuff. Not every book was not every novella was as good as each other, but I gave it an overall star of 4. Okay, and then I read Crooked Kingdom, and then I moved on to Unleash the Power Within by Tony Roberts, which is it's like Tony Roberts speaking at a convention type thing. It's not a book, it's an audio, and I got it on Audible, and it was great. I'm pretty sure I didn't pay a single cent for it when I bought it, and I just ended up eventually watching it, or listening to it. The next book I read was The Obesity Code. Next book I read was my starting of this little collection up here. And I'm literally destroying my shelves right now, so that's going to be fun when I have to clean that up. But next book I read in February was The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. I gave this 4 stars. I read this because I'm very much that person that will watch a movie or a TV show and then find out it's based on a book, and then go buy that book and read it and devour it. And I devoured this entire series. So I read The Duke and I, 4 stars. Then I read The Viscount Who Loved Me. I gave this also 4 stars, which this is what season 2 is based on. Loving it. It's not out yet, but I really want to watch this. What really annoys me is this is a new cover. These are all old ones. So annoying. Next ones I read was An Offer from a Gentleman. An Offer from a Gentleman, which this is a Cinderella story. It's like a Cinderella retelling, and I love Cinderella retellings. This I gave 5 stars. Actually, okay, so The Duke and I... Okay. So The Duke and I is Daphne and Simon's love story, and Daphne is the oldest girl, but the 4th child. Anthony and Kate's love story. Anthony is the eldest. He's the Viscount. An Offer from a Gentleman is Benedict's story, Benedict and Sophie. And it's amazing. I love it. It's just so amazing. And they all sort of go together, so it's great. Okay, and the next book is not that one. It's this one. This is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which... Is that the right one? Yeah. Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is Colin and Penelope's story. I loved this one. This one, I think... Oh no, I gave this one 4 stars. Okay, then the 5th book is Eloise's story. And Eloise is the 5th child. And this is her and Sir Philip's love story. This one I gave 5 stars. Now we're on to the last 3. So then I read When He Was a Wicked. And this is Francesca's love story. And it's Francesca and Michael, I think. Michael. I'm great at remembering this. And that one I gave 5 stars as well. Then, next one is In His Kiss. This is Hyacinth and Gareth. Hyacinth is the youngest. And this I gave 4 stars. And then the final book in this series is Gregory and Hermione, I think, yeah. And this one is called On the Way to the Wedding. And I gave this one 4 stars. There we go. That's back to normal. I'm going to leave the books behind my head there though. But, okay. So that, me reading those 8 books, spans the 16th of February to the 8th of April. But then, I also read this, which is the second epilogues of all 8 books. And this is the Bridgertons Happily Ever After. Actually, all 8 of the... so all 8 of those books have the second epilogue in them, but... which I didn't know when I bought them. But the 9th book has an extra novella type book of the mother. Can't remember her name off the top of my head. That book I gave 4 stars because some of the epilogues were great, some of them were shit. Now up to book number 24 of the year, which was The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie by Jennifer Ashley. That I gave 3 stars. It was great, not super great. After I read The Bridgertons, I went sort of into like historical fiction, or historical romance, sort of, like I liked it sort of, but a lot of the majority of the books that weren't Julia Quinn, that's her name, I didn't like. I loved Julia Quinn's writing. All her books that I read this year, I think I gave them all more than 3 stars. Whereas pretty much all the other historical fiction or historical romance books that I did read, I think I gave them between 2 and 4 stars. I don't think any of them were 5. But yeah, next I read A Discovery of Witches, which I decided to read. Actually, I read on my Kindle because I got my Kindle for my birthday this year. So I first read it on my Kindle. I haven't actually opened these books yet. Very, very cool. But, yeah, so I read A Discovery of Witches in the beginning, at the end of March to April. But yeah, I loved this. I literally like read it completely from start to finish. Physically read it, not in a book form, but Kindle. But yeah, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I ended up wanting to read it because I watched A Discovery of Witches on Binge, I think it was. So yeah. Then I read The Rakess, gave that 3 stars. And Rakess is by Scarlett Peckham. Then I read In Bed with the Earl by Christy Colored. Oh, just show you it up here. Gave that 2 stars. Hated it. Don't remember it. Actually, reading it, I'm like, did I really read that? Okay. Next book I read was Getting a Zero, which is, that was by Alan Finchel. It was stupid. I don't know why I read it. Actually, I know why I read it. It was on Audible and for free, so I read it. Next, I read a Shadow of the Night. And oh, these books, by the way, are by Deborah Harkness. Love this. I think, yeah, this was 5 stars. And yeah, I loved that book. That was like a historical book too. It was amazing, like so good. That was like one of the better ones. Like, I'm pretty sure all of these Discovery of Witches books were 5 stars, but I think that one was one of the better ones. Then I read The Stopover by T.L. Swan. Loved it. That I gave 4 stars, and was one of the first like adult romance books that I actually read, and it was my first T.L. Swan. And now I think I've read 3 of her books now, and I am going to start another one this week. Next book was the 3rd and final book of the All Souls trilogy, which is the books by Deborah Harkness, and this is the Book of Life. This I gave 5 stars, of course, duh. So I ended up buying those physical copies of those books because even though I had like bought the actual books on my Kindle, I really wanted like the physical copy. So I bought it. I was like, yeah, F it, fuck it. We'll just go for it. I don't care. Love these books, I'm buying them. Next book I read was Trophy Life by Lee Galla. That I gave 1 star. I think it was about like a trophy wife and her dead husband or something like that. I can't remember. Next book, which wasn't really a book, it was like a short story. It was a long conversation by Cassandra Clare. Because it was like a novella, I didn't really give it a rating. Next book I read was Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. My first Colleen Hoover book, I gave a 3 star. Not too bad. It was like a love story, but also like had a death in it. It was okay. Next, I read the All Souls Read Time Reading Companion, which is sort of like a how to read the All Souls trilogy by Deborah Harkness. The next 2 books I read were Saga Volume 1 and Volume 2. Gave Saga 1 4 stars and Saga 2 3 stars. And I think they're the only 2 that I read from that. But I do actually, from reading those 2, I was like, I don't mind graphic novels. They weren't bad. I only got them because they were free, because I didn't have to pay for them. And I got them on my Kindle. Next book I read was The Takeover by T.L. Swan. That was amazing. Oh, Tristan? I think it's Tristan. Tristan Miles is so fucking amazing and hot. I love him so much. And makes me want to read so many more T.L. Swan books. And I read the 3rd book in this series as well. Next book I read was Happily Letter After by V. Callerland. That I gave 4 stars. It was really sweet. I actually didn't mind that one. Next book I read was Layla by Colleen Hoover. I gave Colleen Hoover another chance and she shit the brick. She just shit it. It was the worst thing ever. I gave it 2 stars. Probably could have given it 1 star, but it had a few redeeming qualities. I can't tell you if I don't like Colleen Hoover's writing or if I just don't like the story. Next book I read was Dirty Letters by V. Callerland and Penelope Ward. That I gave 3 stars. To be honest, I don't remember it at all. Next book I read was The Initiation by Nikki Sloan. I gave that 4 stars. I'm going to go through this a lot more quickly now because I'm pretty sure I've been talking for ages. Next book I read was The Kiss Quotient, which I think I have on my shelf somewhere, by Helen Kwan. I gave that 3 stars. Not great. Didn't like the story. It had a good premise and everything, but just didn't like the story, so I won't read any more of that from that series. The next book I read, The Obsession by Nikki Sloan, second book in the Initiation series. And I read it so quickly after the initiation because of the cliffhanger. Then I read The Deception from Nikki Sloan straight after I read that. So I finished the trilogy. The trilogy I liked, but The Obsession I gave 4 stars and The Deception I gave 3 stars, so it went down. From that, I didn't really want to read the 4th book or the 5th book when that comes out this year, or this month I think it is. So yeah. Then I read The Alchemist by Paula, I don't know who he is. Hated it. Absolutely hated it. I was like, why are people liking this book? Okay, next book, which is 47. I read The Rogue Not Taken by Sarah McLean, 2 stars. Next, I read The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare, 3 stars. And then I read The Governor's Game and The Warflower Wager by Tessa Dare. And I have all 3 of those books down here. I'm keeping them because I might eventually like them, but all 3 of them I gave 3 stars. Then I read another historical romance, and it was Her Night with the Duke by Diana Quincy. I gave that 3 stars. So yeah. Then I read The Poet X, which I have somewhere on the shelf, by Elizabeth Acevedo. My second Elizabeth Acevedo book. I gave this 3 stars. Then I decided to give another historical romance author a go. And so I read the My Darling Duke by Stacey Reid, 3 stars. Then I read The White Princess by Philippa Gregory. That I gave 4 stars. So yes, that is a historical fiction. So that's like the highest historical fiction on this list. Then I read Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. Next book I read was Punching the Air by Elisa Boy. That I gave 3 stars. Was a nice story, but I didn't feel it. Like everyone says that they feel it, but I didn't. I could be heartless and everything, but I do cry in books. Yeah. Then I read The Black Kids by Christina Hammonds Reed. Gave that 2 stars. Didn't feel that at all. I was like, why are people liking this book? Like, why do people get feels with this book? I got nothing. At one point, like, the only reason it's got a 2 star was because at one point I felt for the characters. But I think after I read the Hate U Give. I read The Hate U Give last year or the year before that. I can't remember now. And that set my bar for those sort of books. And so these other ones just haven't hit it. Then I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. The bar for it was up here, and it missed it so much. It fell so short, it wasn't funny. And I gave it 3 stars. I was this close to DNFing it, but I'm not really a DNFer. So yeah, I have to really hate a book to DNF it. Next book I read was Just Like Heaven by Julia Quinn. This got 4 stars. As I was saying, Julia Quinn, 4 and 5 star books. This was amazing. Not as good as Bridgerton, but not bad. This was the Smythe Smiths. So yeah. Then I read Your Dad Will Do by Katie Roberts. That got 4 stars. It was good. It makes me want to read Birthday Girl, which I haven't yet read. Don't hate me, I haven't read it yet. Then I read Master Your Time, Master Your Life by Brian Tracy. Then I read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. To be honest, not the best book. Like, it had a bar, it missed it. It just didn't reach it. Then I read The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. That got 3 stars. I'd probably put it at 2.5. It just wasn't very good. Then I read Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. That got 3 stars. Again, it had a bar, and there was so much hype around it that it just completely missed it. I just was expecting so much more from it. And for someone who had been wanting to read it since it came out, yeah, nah, it missed it. I'm really glad it is not on my shelf. Okay, then I read Desperate Measures by Katie Robert. 4 stars. Again, sort of where my sort of mind was heading with all this was now like, I need some smut in my books. Makes sense. Then I read, where is it? This one here. Heartstopper Volume 1. I need to get Volume 2, 3, and 4. 4 stars. Then I read Virgin River by Robin Carr. And this was after I had binged all of both seasons 1 and 2 of Virgin River on Netflix before season 3 came out, and I wanted to read this before season 3 came out, so pretty sure I did. Okay, next book I read this year was Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James. That got 5 stars. That was actually really good, and it was my first middle grade that I've ever read, so it was good. Then I start my journey with Cora Riley and Mafia books, and I started with Twisted Loyalties. Yes, as I have stated in previous videos, idiot over here. But I was told that the Kimura Chronicles was better than the Born in Blood, so I started with the better one. Didn't really think I would fall in love. But yeah, so Twisted Loyalties got 5 stars. Then I moved on to Twisted Emotions, which also got 5 stars. Then I read The Power of Now by Edward Toddle. Then I read the illustrated history of noble shadow hunters and denizens of downworlders by Cassandra Clare. Yes, this book over here. Anyway, back to Cora Riley. I read Twisted Pride, Twisted Bonds, Twisted Hearts, all got 4 stars. Then I read 3 Simple Rules by Nikki Sloan. That got 3 stars. So my iffiness for Nikki Sloan is at it. But I really still want to read The Doctor, that series. But I won't finish with the 3 Simple Rules books. Okay, then I finished the Kimura Chronicles with Twisted Cravings, and that got 4 stars. That was sort of like the worst book in that series. Then I read Get Smart by Brian Tracy and Year of Yes by Shauna Rhimes. Then I read Gifting Me to His Best Friend by Katie Robert, 3 stars. I can't really tell you why it was 3 stars, it just didn't. The first one was good, second one not very good. But yeah, Forget Me Not was my next book by QB Tyler. I gave that 3 stars. Wasn't a terrible book, but I had it hyped up and it just didn't hit my hype. Next book I read was Jay's Gay Agenda by Jason June. Gave that 3 stars. It didn't hit the spot for me. Then I read My Dad's Best Friend by Katie Roberts. I gave that 2 stars. So Katie Roberts started good and then sort of went down. Okay. 4th book I read this year is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. That got 4 stars. So yeah, it was really good. I thought that was really good. After I had heard quite a few bad reviews, after I had read it, I was like, okay, interesting. Next book I read was Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man by Steve Harvey. Then I read A Night Like This by Julia Quinn, which this is the 2nd book in the Smythe Smith 4-book series, I think it is, but I only read 3 of them. The next book I read was The Sum of All Kisses, which is the 3rd book. That got 4 stars as well. Next book I read was Learn My Lesson by Katie Roberts, which got 2 stars. I think that was the second book in that series, so I stopped reading that series. The first book I really liked, but the second book, I think it might have been just like Meg and Hades and Hercules love story, I didn't like. But yeah, then I read the second book in the Tilly Book Wanderer series, which is Tilly and the Lost Fairy Tales by Anna James. Got 4 stars. Then I read Get Happy, Introduction to Happiness. Stupid book. Then I started on the Born in Blood series. So, I actually think I read all of them, yep. So I read Bound by Honor, 5 stars. Bound by Duty, 4 stars. Bound by Hatred, 4 stars. Bound by Temptation, 5 stars. Bound by Vengeance is 3 stars. That was Growl's story, which I didn't like Growl at all. Then I read Bound by Love, which got 5 stars. Bound by the Past, which got 4 stars because that was Dante's and I wasn't very into Dante's love story. Then I read Twisted Emotions, which I gave 5 stars. Then I read Bound by Blood, 3 stars. It was like an anthology, so some of them were great, some of them were crap. Then I read The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I gave that 3.5 stars. It had hype around it, and it was good. Don't get me wrong, it was good, but I just didn't like it super much. Then I read Luca Vitiello, which is Born in Blood by Luca's point of view, which I gave 5 stars. Then I read The Casanova by T.L. Swan, and that's the 3rd book in the Miles High Club series. And now I need to read some more T.L. Swan. Then I started the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend, which I gave 4 stars. And that leads us up to the beginning of September and the start of my BookTube journey. So yeah, that is all the books, all 103 books that I read before I started my YouTube channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was probably very, very long. I know, don't hate me for it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and I will see you in my next video. Bye!